So here's some advice on how to make storytelling, great storytelling versus terrible storytelling. And the reason I'm telling you this is that over the weekend, Lisa and I went to see the Maria Callas documentary film over here at the Paris Theater on 58th Street. It got very good reviews. It was released by Sony, and it's 2 hours long. I'm not an opera fan. I don't really know anything about Maria Callas. I don't know anything about her story. It got pretty good reviews. And so when I sat down to watch it, as soon as they start, it says Maria Callas in her own words. And as soon as they said that in her own words, I knew I was in trouble because there was going to be no narrative. Instead, what they had done was they had a bunch of interviews she'd done during her long and illustrious career, the biggest one with David Frost on television in Britain, I guess in the 1960s. And they took chunks of the interview and jammed it together with all this news footage they had. And they started with her as a child and they went to her death. She died at the age of 53. And they tried to use her sound bites and massage them and bend them around and twist them to try to make the thing a comprehensive narrative that told a coherent story. This is a lot of work, and I gotta tell you something, it doesn't work because Maria Callas, she's an opera singer, she's not a documentary filmmaker, and she's not really a storyteller per se, although she can tell you the story of Tosca or Lady Macbeth, I'm sure, to her heart's content. You, as the filmmaker, you are the storyteller. It's your job to tell the story. What that film needed was a narrative. It needed a narrative that would lay out the story for me, the non-opera, not really interested in opera person who comes to and you have to make the story comprehensible to me. You had to really love Maria Callas. I mean, they had big swaths of her singing and stuff. You had to really love her to stay awake, not to be cruel about the film and not to be cruel about people who love opera, but there was a great story to be told there, and the people who made the film, they didn't tell the story. They let her tell the story, and that's not really what she does for a living. And maybe if they'd interviewed her and said for 4 hours, tell me your life story, then they could have cut something together that made sense, but they didn't. They just took snippets of sound bites and jammed them together, and the thing was, to me, it was a mess, which is a tragedy because she does, in fact, have a great story, and if you really paid attention and stayed awake through the whole 2 hours, you would kind of get the gist. But great filmmaking is not about getting the gist, and great documentary filmmaking is not about making the audience work, which is what they did in this case. So here's my advice. Always have a narrative in a documentary. Even the main person can be the narrator, but you have to tell. Don Hewitt, the guy who invented 60 Minutes, titled his biography, Tell Me a Story. And that's what he used to tell all the people that worked for him, tell me a story. So if you want to be a documentary filmmaker or do nonfiction, you have to. You have to tell me a story. And your job as the storyteller is to make the story easy for me to understand. And this one wasn't.